Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, episode number 187 of Let's Go Racing. Tyler Jones, Dominic Aragon here with you as we will look back at the weekend that was at Pocono with Chase Briscoe getting into victory lane for the first time in 2025. Also, his first victory for Joe Gibbs Racing. We'll talk all about that. And we will look ahead to this weekend's race at Atlanta as well. We'll go over our top headlines and we'll answer your mailbag questions coming up at the end of today's show. Dominic joins me right now. Dom, quick note off the top here. Our friend David Starr was supposed to join us, but he is preparing to return to the NASCAR Cup Series this weekend. Some exciting stuff there.
Oh, very exciting stuff. And we keep it real here on the show. I think it's worth noting, too. We were on the phone with him trying to get everything before the show. And David had just landed at the airport in Charlotte, and his phone was about to die. We've all been there, Tyler. We know how technological problems can be sometimes. But no, he wanted to, of course, thank for the opportunity to be on the show, and really excited this weekend to be back in the Cup Series with Garage 66. He won't be pulling double duty, but his sponsors and his partners were really on board with him doing the Cup race. And when I had talked to Carl Long out of Texas a couple of months back, Tyler, that they were trying to put together a lease motor for the Atlanta, Talladega, and Daytona races. And it seems like all signs have pointed that there's going to be a competitive car with the Garage 66 entry this Saturday night in Atlanta. And we saw what David could do behind the wheel at Talladega in October with that seventh place finish. So we know David knows how to ride the draft. He's been on this style of Atlanta in the Xfinity Series, and I believe he'll be the oldest competitor out there this weekend, too. So it'll be fun following along David and seeing what he can do in that 66 car. And potentially, we'll see, maybe it's the first of many starts. But got to think if Atlanta goes good, Tyler, maybe there's some more Cup races in David's backyard here in 2025.
Yeah, and friend of the show, Carl Long. For Carl, I'll be honest, it has been, some challenges that he's faced the last couple of seasons. And I'll give Carl a lot of credit. They're getting a leased motor with Ford, I believe it is this weekend. And, to get this opportunity, get David in the car. We saw him, Carl, running a truck race this past weekend with a very nice 69 truck out there. I think, not only a great opportunity for David, but to Carl, too, even with the adversity they faced to keep on fighting here.
Yeah, certainly. And I remember Carl saying, maybe it was on our show or at an interview at some point, but why the decision to get back to the Cup Series? They had their next gen vehicle. They ran a few races in 22, and then we didn't really see it return, I believe, till last year. He said, well, it's not doing anything sitting in the garage. We might as well get it back to the racetrack. So really cool to see Carl and the team putting forth the effort that they're doing. And they run the races they can. And I know when the partnership's there and it makes sense to do that, they will run as many races as they can. And I know David had been eyeing running the Texas race in April, or I guess early May, and that didn't work out, but this certainly has. And like I said, I think here's a really good opportunity for our colleague here to potentially have a good race on Saturday. We know a lot can happen in Atlanta. We saw, was it 2 years ago, Tyler? There was a crash on lap 2, took out a bunch of cars at the front of the field. So not that you want to get your positions through a crash, but we know David's MO at a lot of these races is kind of hanging in the back, letting the race get a feel for the car, and then make that charge in stage 3. Wouldn't be shocked if it can go his way on Saturday and it plays out the way he wants. We probably see David Starr trying to mix it up in stage 3.
Yeah, it'd be great if it works out that way, and we'll certainly be rooting him on. Don, let's start with a look back at Pocono. Chase Briscoe gets it done. Denny Hamlin seemed like he was the car to beat all day long, but Chase Briscoe delivers when it matters. And, I know that people kind of short sell fuel mileage wins, but Dom, I think this is well earned from Chase Briscoe here because I thought it showed off skill on his part to save the fuel he needed, but also to hold off Denny Hamlin at Denny's best track with arguably a better car behind him in that 11 and Denny Hamlin. I was very impressed. Chase Briscoe, he's been a pole merchant for much of this season. They've done a good job of qualifying, but haven't seen the results necessarily. I thought this was a big deal for Chase Briscoe to get that 19 car back in victory lane. There was a lot of pressure on him inheriting that, replacing Martin Truex Jr., and and he delivered a big breakthrough performance for him, I think.
And if you go back and listen to what he had to say post race or read his comments through his media availability, and they pull him in the media center and he talks about it, there's pressure. There's pressure, Joe Gibbs Racing. The expectation is that you can win. And he had said in his interview, too, because he made sure he wasn't discrediting his time at Stewart Haas Racing. But over the first 12, 13 races of this year, he was underdriving the vehicles he was racing at Joe Gibbs Racing because he was just used to the equipment he was in. He realized he could get more out of the cars. And he had mentioned too when he had signed his contract that since this playoff system has started, but 40 entries, 40 opportunities for Joe Gibbs Racing to qualify for the playoffs, and they have qualified high 30s. And he said that was a lot of pressure, and the expectation here is to win. He did say it was the least enjoyable win, but he didn't want to take that out of context and said, no, winning's still enjoyable, but there's a lot more pressure here. And if you don't perform, you're out the door. We've seen Joe Gibbs Racing be as cutthroat as ever, getting rid of drivers like J.J. Yaley, getting rid of champion drivers like Denny Hamlin, or not Denny Hamlin, rather, Matt Kenseth and Kyle Busch. Granted, those are unique situations, but we know Joe Gibbs Racing is quick to get rid of you if you're not performing. Eric Jones comes to mind. So Chase Briscoe sealing his fate there at least next year, we would imagine.
I think so. Good win for him. And, I look at Chase Briscoe, Dom, and this is his third career win, I believe. This would be his third time in the playoff. And, he and Austin Cindric kind of entered the sport around the same time. And I think both of them, I think they're a good comparison to each other. They're kind of in the same stages of their careers where, they we can expect them to get one win a year and make the playoff. I'm curious if the same can be said for us in a sense. Are we going to see one of them in the near future, maybe even this year or next year, take that next step and be a multi-win guy and competing for championships? Do you think it's within the cards for Chase Briscoe to be a championship contender in 2025, or do you think he's still another year away from being that?
He's got all the pieces around him. He's got James Small, a championship caliber style crew chief. And while he has not won a title yet atop the pit box, he has gotten his driver to the championship for multiple times with Martin Truex Jr. And they've kept him around for a reason. And you can tell Chase has worked at mastering his craft as a race car driver. He's lost weight. He's eating better. The nutrition, the behind the back end scene of things are taken a lot more serious. I would say a lot more so this year in that role at Joe Gibbs Racing. Who's not to say goes on a nice run in the playoffs, gets some momentum, and now you have 9 weeks to really solidly prepare. Really good vehicles, build your notebook, test some things out at some of these upcoming tracks. We got road courses coming up. We've got road courses in the playoffs. We've got Atlanta this weekend. Maybe you try things there that you could use potentially at Talladega. Build that notebook, and they're in a spot now they don't have to worry about a playoff spot. Now they were in a pretty decent spot to begin with when it came to the point situation, but you don't have to worry about it. You're not points racing anymore. You're racing for playoff points now. This opens up the playbook. You want to be as high as you can in those points at the end of the year, at the end of the regular season, because you get more playoff points. Maybe we see them go for more stage wins. We've seen guys get cut or miss a cut by a couple of points because maybe they could have scored some more playoff points. I think you see that 19 team open up the playbook a lot more as you have with other winners. And because you're locked in 2 months out of the playoffs, a lot less pressure and a lot more pressure that will be on you in the playoffs.
Yeah. What's kind of your thoughts on Chase Briscoe at this point in his career? I want to touch on that for a second, Tom, because
Yeah.
here he was at Stewart Haas Racing, and Stewart Haas had a lot of problems. And, here he was taking the flagship car, that 14 that Tony Stewart won a championship with. Clint Boyer did a pretty decent job with. And, he in his second season gets the victory lane for the first time and then was just very inconsistent. But a lot of it wasn't his own doing. The team didn't really help him out much, had their issues. Got the win at Darlington, of course, last year. Do you think Chase Briscoe is where he should be? Do you feel confident his capabilities right now? What do you think of where he's at this point right now?
I think the sky's the limit. I think a good comparison to draw, and of course they were different points in their career, but our listeners that have been following the sport for a long time might agree, or they might strongly disagree with this, but I think of Sterling Marlin and how early in his career there were flashes of brilliance. Won a couple races at Morgan McClure Motorsports. Chase Briscoe did the same thing, but once he finally got paired up with Felix Sabates and Chip Ganassi, we really saw Sterling Marlin take off. Now, granted, that happened a lot later in Marlin's career. He'd already been racing and cut close to 20 years. This is Briscoe's fifth full-time season. So you look at that, there's a lot more potential to rack up a lot more wins. But I would draw those two comparisons where the driver overperformed and got the most out of their equipment whenever they could, and the opportunities to win, they would come. But when you actually got them really good equipment, you saw them be a lot more competitive. I'd be curious if you think the Sterling Marlin Chase Briscoe comparison and those parallels are a fair comparison, or if you might even have a better one.
I think that's a good comparison. Yeah, I think that he's uh at this point in his career, it's one of those things where you look and you see the talent is there, but it's the consistency. And one thing I look at too, Dom, typically we find with these drivers, okay, what is what is your wheelhouse? It's easy to spot the road course ringers a mile away. You look at Josh Berry, and that's a short track guy, right? Um, I think Chase Briscoe from the Darlington win and now Pocono, I think he might have something in these bigger tracks, which if you look at history, the 19 team, for example, with Martin Truex and whether it was all the way back with Cole Pern or with James Small, they were really good with their mile and a half program. Um, to me, I think that if we're talking about Chase Briscoe of finding that niche of sorts, I think for him it's going to be the mile and a halfs, the bigger tracks are going to be the thing that we're talking about with Chase Briscoe kind of finding his craft of sorts.
That's very fair. And like you said, the mile and a halfs were good. The short tracks, they were sneaky good on the short tracks too, with Martin Truex Jr. late 2010s, early 2020s. In fact, Truex had never won on a short track till later in his career, and he finally racked up a few of those victories. And it seems like 'cause Truex was good at winning poles and starting up front, but Chase Briscoe and James Small are hitting on something in practice and the limited amount of time they're able to hit to dial in their Q trim, sit on the pole. That sparks some natural momentum as well. And maybe again that comparison too, when you look at some of these guys that did this over the course of their careers, Ken Schrader only won 4 times, but he had 24 poles. Chase Briscoe certainly has more poles than he does victories at this point in his career, but what a dual threat. If you can go out and win the pole every week or start up front, that's what counts. And Danny Hamlin has said it best, Tyler. The good drivers, the great drivers, the exceptional ones can take a fifth place car and make it a race winning car.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great point. So with Chase Briscoe now in the playoff, that playoff bubble kind of tightens a bit. That's one less spot, although we anticipated that Chase Briscoe was probably going to be in the playoffs anyway. Um, what do you think now? Those guys kind of on the bubble that are on the fringe or on the outside looking in. Kind of break that down for me, Dom. What's kind of your thoughts and the way things stack up right now?
So let's start with the points. Let's start there. I'll read you off the names, the points, and then we'll kind of break that down even further. But when you look at the 5 drivers who were in on points at the playoffs started today, right now you have Chase Elliott with a comfortable 2 race lead, 120 points. You have up to 60 points you could gain on a competitor per event. So about a 2 race advantage there for Chase Elliott in the 19. They look solidly in the playoffs right now. Tyler Reddick, 107 points above. Chris Buescher, who did miss last year, at 38 points above. Bubba Wallace, who missed last year as well, at plus 29. And Alex Bowman, who is holding the final spot, 20 points above. And then when you look at the drivers that are below that cut line, about a race to a race and a half under, you have Ryan Preece, minus 20. AJ Allmendinger, minus 59. Eric Jones, minus 62. Kyle Busch, minus 63. Carson Hocevar, minus 70. Michael McDowell and John Hunter Nemechek, they are both at minus 71. A lot of good cars, a lot of good teams and drivers there, Tyler, that will miss the playoffs this year. But this is the system we're in. You win, you're in. You don't win a race, you're not going to be a part of the playoffs, or you better be really high in points. 2022 really proved that, where you had Martin Truex Jr. miss out on the playoffs by 3 points in Daytona. He was fifth in points entering that race.
Yeah, and some of the names you mentioned, Dom, I'm looking at like we mentioned Chase Briscoe winning this past week and taking a playoff spot. there's names that are going to be very close. Like you got to talk about AJ at all of those road course races we got coming up. Carson Hocevar is getting very close. I think Kyle Busch at any given moment, if they can figure it out, he's capable of winning any given week. I mean, there there's more first time winners this year coming in the very near future. I think that are going to take some of those spots here pretty soon.
And when you look at 9 races left and you have Atlanta, you have road courses upcoming, man. And who's not to say a fuel mileage race gets sprinkled in here or there, or a rain shortened event, or some sort of weather event that produces some sort of winner we were not expecting. Like I said, we're going to have good drivers that will not be a part of the playoff grid in 2025. I want to ask your thoughts on Kyle Busch. He re-signed, he re-upped. RCR pulled their extension, and they're exercising the option to bring him back for a fourth year in that 8 car. Is this just has it been just a disastrous calendar year? And we know that 8 team is really good. Are there bigger problems here?
That's a great question because it's hard to pinpoint because I think one of my favorite things I like to say, and I've been saying this just about life in general. That's not just even the sports world. Two things can be true at once. And I think everybody's been blaming RCR, and I get it. And I do think RCR holds a lot to blame for that. But we do know that he has a fantastic crew chief in Randall Burdett, who has a great track record with Tyler Reddick and with Kyle Busch in his first year. So what I'm looking at, Dom, for me, is I think that there are two things going on. I think that Kyle Busch, some people might crucify me for this, but I'll be frank. I don't think Kyle Busch is as good of a driver as he used to be. I think that he has slipped up, that he is not the driver that he was at one point in time. But I do think that RCR themselves, they are underperforming and they are not getting the job done on top of that. I think it's twofold. I don't think that this is all completely on RCR, although they probably hold most of the responsibility here. But I do think that Kyle Busch himself has taken a step back in his talent level to what he used to be.
So again, we've drawn a lot of comparisons on this show. We saw him just decline over past champion, by the way, and Bobby Labonte decline over his years. Is this kind of like a Bobby Labonte decline that we're seeing with Kyle Busch?
No, I wouldn't call it Bobby Labonte because Bobby Labonte hit a wall hard. Like his last win was what, 2003?
Yes.
And then he was just not even a championship contender, not, what we would call a playoff driver. He didn't make a single chase, not one after 2003. Like Kyle Busch is still competing for the playoffs. We're still talking about him at least being a playoff threat. I think it's more so like Jimmy Johnson. I think that's the better comparison here. Because you think about like, Jimmy's when he fell apart there towards the end, similar, I think a similar situation where Hendrick was down at that point in time. Hendrick was going through a lot of struggles, and Jimmy Johnson, he had fallen back. He wasn't the driver that he used to be at that point in time, too. So I think that's the better comparison if we're going to make. We don't have to go all the way back to Bobby Labonte. I don't think that's fair to Kyle Busch, but I think Jimmy Johnson's the better comparison here.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, because RCR, man, and like we've talked about on the show too, maybe similar to the Dallas Cowboys. Their last championship was 94. Very historic team owners and multiple championships and a very detailed career in those industries. But it's been a long time since those glory days. And it seemed like Kyle Busch would be the driver to bring back to the promised land. Tyler, you had Kyle Busch in your final four in 23, and they looked so good. That 18, they were firing off out of the box. And to be fair to balance it all out, Kyle Busch was competitive last year. He was the points leader entering Las Vegas in 2024 and finished second 3 times, 3 different races. This year, that Coda run looked very spectacular. When they have shown up and unloaded fast, Kyle Busch and that 8 team look as good as ever. It looks like a Kyle Busch with the 2010s, but it seems like that equipment is far and few between of even 2023.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've taken a step back and look at Austin Dillon too. For as much as people talk about Kyle Busch and his problems, um, what the hell is going on with Austin Dillon? Austin Dillon had that fluke win last year at Richmond, which everybody knows about, and what he did to win that race. And ultimately, they kicked him out of the playoff for that. But Austin Dillon's performance has been even worse than Kyle Busch's. And if his last name wasn't Dillon, he would not be on that in that ride. Like for like I said, two things can be true. I do think that Kyle Busch isn't the driver he used to be, but you know, I think if you're RCR, we've seen discussions in the past where, hey, Austin Dillon's future is in an ownership role that he's set to one day replace his grandfather. I mean, Richard Childress, the guy wants to win. He's a competitor. He's as competitive as anybody in that garage. Realistically, I think that they need to be talking about not about Kyle Busch. They need to figure things out with him. But, you know, and again, it's a tough conversation to have with family and all that. But if Austin Dillon can't figure it out soon, maybe it's time for him to move to an ownership role, or maybe you put him in a Colin car or something like his brother Ty. Like I feel pretty confident saying you put Austin Hill in that 3 car right now, and he would be performing a lot better than Austin Dillon would.
Yeah, absolutely. And Austin Hill seems like he's going to be a future Cup star at some point. I don't know. Again, different conversation for a different time, place. Maybe he's enjoying the Xfinity Series, but he does run the Select Cup races. As a racer, you always hear him say they want to be Cup Series drivers at some point. But maybe he's comfortable in Xfinity right now. Maybe the circumstances are just not allowing it. But we see that down the road potentially. But it's going to be very interesting to follow these next 9 weeks, Tyler. Of all these drivers who are below the cut line, who do you think would be the biggest upset, or who has the potential to be the biggest upset to the playoff grid over the next several months?
I think it's your road course specialist. I think AJ Allmendinger is the easiest one. Because Colleagues improved this year, which is funny that we're talking about RCR and their issues, and Colleague is running the same stuff, and they've been much better. Now that SVG's already got his win, I think AJ is a threat. And another thing too, I'll give AJ some credit here on this, Dom. He is, of these guys that came from open wheel in recent memory, not counting Tony Stewart. That's not recent memory anymore. In recent memory, we had this big run in the late 2000s and early 2010s of all these open wheel drivers coming over. AJ was one of them. Danica, Dario Franchitti, Sam Hornish,
Michael
Scott
McDowell.
McGee, Michael McDowell. Um, you know, and I would say that without a doubt, AJ was the best of all of them. And I think Michael McDowell has come along nicely. He started out slow, but he's turned into having a good career himself. But and the reason that AJ, I think, has come a long way and why he's the best of those open wheel guys that came over in that stretch was what he's done in the ovals. He, is just as good as anybody else. He's one of the best when it comes to road courses. But would anybody, in all honesty, be shocked if AJ won in Atlanta this week? No, he can win in Atlanta. He's won in Atlanta in the Xfinity Series. He's won a decent amount of oval races in the Xfinity Series in his career. He's still looking for his first oval win in Cup, but I think AJ's not only a threat in the road courses, but I wouldn't shock me at all if he gets that oval win here at some point sooner than later too.
Certainly do that. And the four top tens, he's been flirting with a playoff spot all year. It's got to help too. Knowing you're not getting to October 2025, wondering if you're going to be in the car next year. Colleague already announced he's going to be back in that ride next year. That has to provide some relief, some much less stress and much less pressure. Things gotten worry about racking up the top tens, top five stage points, stage wins, and potentially a victory, and add some more trophies to that trophy hunting case.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think. Right. Let's look ahead this weekend to Atlanta. Dom, this is the first race of the year that we are going back to a track we have already been to. It is going to be hot as balls. I don't know why we are running Atlanta in late June. Some genius in the schedule decided to do that, but hey, nonetheless, we're going to do a Saturday night hot Atlanta. This, Dom, last time that we were at Atlanta, Dom, in the NASCAR Cup Series earlier this year. You know, that that race, I'll say this much. As much as I think that racing in Atlanta this time of year is probably not the wisest move when it comes to heat and everything. Um, and I guess it's now EchoPark Speedway, so we're correct there. That was the start of Christopher Bell's three win streak. He has not won since then, by the way. But that was a March race, a little bit cooler, and it was a daytime race. Hot night race here. It'll be entertaining, but I would expect the race itself to be a lot different. Could Christopher Bell win? Of course he could, but I don't think you're looking at like Christopher Bell being able to just go back to the same playbook he ran last time and win in the same fashion.
It's going to be your super speedway guys that are going to be up front on this race weekend. The Fords tend to work really well here. Fords have swept qualifying more often than not at this track. And so a Team Penske victory, a Wood Brothers type deal wouldn't shock me on that. We'll get to our picks in a minute, but it seems like Ford has their stuff together when they go to Atlanta Motor Speedway. And Team Penske, I think, mostly of all that would be the ones that you would argue with, and Richard Childress Racing too. And you got to throw in the RFK team as well. Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano. I was there in 23, well, before the rain came, and you saw the 22 and the 6 working quite well together, like they were teammates of old. So this race is going to certain the ones. It's going to play to the favor of the ones who work together the best. And again, the Fords tend to have their camp the best when it comes to this style of racing.
Yeah, I think so. One more note before we get to news and notes here on the media side of things too. Prime Video, phenomenal job. Their package is already over for the year. The 5 races they had, they did a great job. But now we transition over to TNT, and Dominic, it'll be cool. Like we get the same booth, we get the same 3 guys that we've seen the last few weeks in Double A, Dale Jr. and Steve Letarte. So that'll be great. But for me, what's going to be interesting is the production standpoint. I think what made Amazon so great in their run was not just the personalities, but the production itself was top notch. I think the booth is still going to be great with those 3 based on what we saw the last few weeks. But I'm very curious for TNT, and they have some more restrictions with being on cable as opposed to Prime that had the flexibility they had of being streaming here. Um, TNT, like I think they're off to a good start with their talent, but the production side of things, that's to me is what's going to be the comparison that's drawn to Prime that people are hoping high expectations for. We know the booth is going to be good, but can the production hold its own?
And then all those elements you look at are how long are we going to, what kind of elements will we have on a post race show? Because Amazon Prime certainly had a lot more flexibility with that window, but even graphics packages. One thing I noticed they were doing at Michigan, and I think the viewer really enjoyed it at home. I sure did in the media center when they were showing the 2 vehicles saving gas. Carson Hocevar, William Byron showing the throttle
The
trace,
burn bar.
throttle they were giving. All that stuff's really good. Does TNT carry that over?
Yeah.
Those little things that add up to a lot.
And I was a big fan of TNT's coverage in the previous iteration. They did, Dom, 90 minutes of pre-race back in the day. You had NASCAR live and then countdown to green. And then a post-race show afterwards. Um, we saw people like Bill Weber be involved, Larry McReynolds, Wally Dallenbach, Benny Parsons, Kyle Petty, Marty Snyder. I mean, they had some tremendous talents, good, clean graphics package. Adam Alexander was the play-by-play guy the last time they had it, and Double A's coming back here now. They have some great history in the sport. It's been 11 years since they broadcasted a race, but uh, you know, I certainly enjoyed it. To me, this is a welcomed return for TNT to have these 5 races, uh, to have the stuff on Max as well. They've done a really good job with the in-car stuff that they've had all season, and they're going to be simulcasting on Max as well. It's great to have TNT back. What do you remember from your days watching NASCAR on TNT back in the day, Dom?
All those things were great. Their summer series of coverage was always great. The first race that we got of double file restarts in 2009 came at Pocono during TNT's coverage. I remember that very specifically. But
The
what I'm really hoping for most, Tyler, and I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe if you know, you can share with us, is AC/DC going to bring back TNT?
I haven't heard anything.
I would love that. That just sent it over the top for me. The classic rock, the remake they did for it, it was just too classic. Maybe low hanging fruit, but they went with it and ran with it.
They always loved their rock music. Born to Be Wild was another one they did for a long time too.
Fueled by Metallica.
Fueled by Metallica is another one too. Yeah. Uh, so yeah, it'll be neat to see what exactly they bring to the table. I'm glad that we get people that Dom have kind of been hidden from the sport for a little bit returning. Alan Cavana is going to be on pit road. Um, Shannon Spake returns after she was let go by Fox last year. We're going to see Parker Klugerman and Jamie McMurray in the studio show, and we get this alt cast with Larry Mack and Jeff Burton on True TV. I'm intrigued with the alt cast. I want to see like those are two old school kind of redneck guys in Jeff Burton and Larry Mack. And I'm intrigued. I don't know how much I'll watch of it, but I'll tune in for a bit. I want to see what perspective those two have together and how they do with their alt cast too.
Yeah, it'd be kind of like a Manning brothers kind of thing with Bill Belichick, how that was with Monday Night Football, and just giving a different perspective. It's going to be really cool to see what those two have to say. You have a lot of credibility with those guys and what they were able to do in the sport. So you get tired of the other booth, you can just go and flip it over like these guys are just sitting on the couch with you watching the race.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be cool. And Mama Smith and others, yeah, it'll be great. Certainly excited about TNT's return and looking forward to it and all the action this weekend. Dom, let's get to our news and notes, beginning with the headlines in the sport. Go ahead and lead us off here.
Well, we'll take it to the battle, not on the racetrack, but in the courtroom as we continue to follow the 2311 and Front Row Motorsports battle in their lawsuit against NASCAR. So earlier this week, on Tuesday, June 24th, attorneys battling for the other teams, 12 of the NASCAR 15 race teams, were arguing in federal court that they do not want to disclose their financial records, which NASCAR is trying to subpoena. The teams would call it catastrophic, and that's the direct quote, catastrophic. They want to have some sort of balance here where they're not sharing with the public everything that goes on with the racing. Plus, they don't want to hand that over to NASCAR. They do compete for sponsors, which is worth noting here too. But a lot of this reporting coming from the Associated Press with Fox Sports and some of these NASCAR beat reporters who are in the courtroom and following this on the day-to-day. You also had earlier in the week too with the teams talking of the 2311 or Front Row Motorsports where the countersuit on Monday, the judge who's overlooking everything denied Front Row and 2311's motion to dismiss the countersuit. And pretty much the too long didn't read on that, Tyler, is that the judge saying, look, we got to let this play out. And as we get closer to December, present more of the facts as they come the way.
This is not ending anytime soon. Um, it's going to continue to drag on. This is getting ugly. And the next thing I'm curious is we have a few weeks before legally, and maybe this could change again potentially before then, that the 2311 and Front Row cars could have their charters temporarily taken away and run as open teams. And that opens up a whole nother can of worms because, Dom, I know we hardly ever see 40 car, more than, 40 car fields and, entries that eclipse that amount. But if it were to happen, like, we got Carl running this weekend, for example. PJ McLeod runs from time to time. We've seen, Jimmy Johnson. We've seen, several others here. I mean, there could be a world where they're fighting just for a spot in a race and their purse amount is significantly less if they don't get, some type of injunction of sorts within the next couple of weeks here.
Going to be very interesting to follow. And it's drama. I think you had a great comparison last week talking about how it's the two guys in the office standing up to the boss. And everyone's kind of secretly rooting. But now I don't know so much if they're rooting because their hands are tied. They don't want their financial information out. They don't want NASCAR to know how much they're charging for sponsorships or other teams to know some of their proprietary information when it comes to financial stuff. So it's very interesting. It's drama. We'll certainly be following it and see what the developments happen over the next few weeks. But December's a long way off, Tyler.
It is. It is. What else we got going?
Look ahead to this weekend at the Quaker State 400. Well, you have all three NASCAR touring series. You're going to have the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, which is making their debut at Lime Rock Park, the road course in Connecticut. But you do have the Xfinity and Cup Series racing this weekend in Atlanta. And you mentioned the full field. This will be the third time this year we have a full field in the NASCAR Cup Series. And the four open entries that are highlighting the entry list this weekend. You have Corey LaJoie returning in the 0-1 car with Rick Ware Racing. It'll be his fourth start of the 2025 season and his first since Bristol. You have our guy, David Starr, making his first Cup start since 2024 in the number 66, Garage 66 Ford entry. BJ McLeod with his own team, Live Fast Motorsports, and their 78 Chevrolet. He's making his third start of 2025. And you have Connor Zilch making his third start 2025 and a fourth Trackhouse Racing entry, their number 87 vehicle. Of all those open entries, well, who stands out the most here?
Well, David, obviously. I mean,
That's the right answer, yes. But besides David,
besides David, Connor Zillich for me. We didn't talk about this earlier, Dom, but how about last week at Pocono in the Xfinity Series? He gets his first oval win. I say oval, triangle, but you get the idea.
yes, yes.
Um, with just a really good performance. And we know that he's a road course guy, and he was going to have to learn more when it came to these oval type tracks. And he's picking it up. He's been getting better and better. How about Dale Jr. on the box with him getting the job done? That was awesome to see. Well, now you put him in Atlanta, and I know it runs more like a super speedway, but I'm very intrigued to see Connor Zilic with a cup opportunity, but not on a road course. How can he perform? How can he do? To me, there's some intrigue there. For me, it's Connor Zilic. What about you?
I look at another driver who has run really exceptionally well at these style of tracks, and he had a chance to win this race in 2022. Corey LaJoie in that 0-1 car. He was leading on one lap 90 of the Daytona 500 with a handful of laps in contention to win that race. And Corey has said, he's told me before too, he likes Atlanta because he feels like this is more in his wheelhouse, more of an opportunity to be able to control the outcome as opposed to Talladega. And if given the choice, he would race Atlanta, and he is back racing this week. So great opportunity for that 0-1 team to really show. And Corey LaJoie, we know he has a lot more left in the tank. Sometimes there's factors outside of that control that, but a good run on Saturday. We know one race can change your career. Corey LaJoie goes out and has a great race. I think of all the four drivers that are on the open entry, it really doesn't matter for the 78. BJ's told us on this show that he's going to continue to run super speeder races as long as he can. Connor Zilch has a bright future. David's going to run where he can, but of the most of those guys, Corey LaJoie could have the potential to have the biggest impact on their career with a good race on Saturday, and I'm going to look for that.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. What else we got down?
Our last thing here on the news and notes, the odds. I'm going to have you guess, Tyler. Who do you think the odds on favorite is before we've turned a lap on the racetrack for qualifying and practices for the Quaker State 400?
William Byron 600.
He's at 1,600. He's a
Oh,
co-favorite there, tied for fifth. Your favorite for the Quaker State 400 is Ryan Blaney at plus 750. And
okay.
maybe no surprise, Austin Cindric and Joey Logano of Team Penske. That trio, the Penske trio, plus 850 with Logano and Cindric. So odds makers are thinking they're going to have a really good shot at dictating the race on Saturday night. Kyle Busch at plus 1050, and then you have to move down to plus 1600 as the next, the fifth best with Christopher Bell, William Byron, past winners of this race. Chase Elliott, a past winner of this race as well. Brad Keselowski and Kyle Larson joining at the plus 1600 mark. Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, Denny Hamlin at plus 2000. Carson Hocevar, who finished second in the winter race here in 2025, plus 2200 with Bubba Wallace. Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick, Daniel Suarez, who won this race last year at plus 2,500. And you go on down the list, and I'll have you guess. What do you think David's odds are for a victory on Saturday?
Not good. I would guess that he's the lowest of any driver there, probably by a lot.
That would be correct. Yeah, plus 500 or 500 to 1. So plus 50,000. The next best.
Throw $5 on David, everybody.
There you go. BJ McLeod at plus 35,000 or 350 to 1 would be the next one behind that. Cody Ware at 250 to 1. So, yeah, David's the long shot.
There you go. So time for our picks. I'm going to go with the guy that I thought should be favored. Give me William Byron, 24 car. He's won in Atlanta before. I think he gets it done. Uh, he's as good as anybody at these, you know, uh, what do we call them? Drafting tracks. Yeah,
Drafting.
I like William Byron this week. How about you?
I'm going to go somebody who's been doing a lot longer. We're talking about shaking up the playoff picture. Imagine if he wins. We know he's capable of winning. It's just been a get up to speed type of season. Brad Keselowski will get the victory on Saturday night and redeem himself and right the ship that has been a very shaky 2025 season. Keselowski, lock it in, wins at Atlanta Saturday. And oh, by the way, where's David finishing? Where's your prediction on that?
I'll give David a top 25.
I think it's reasonable. Lead lap or one lap off the pace. It'll be very interesting to follow and just depending on how the race plays out.
He'll hang around the back and hope that all the accidents happen in front of him.
And I asked David what the goal would be for Saturday, and he said he wants to run all the laps. He wants to just learn as much as he can, but the big goal is to run as much of the race as they can and to finish every single lap.
There we go. I love it. Best of luck, David. We'll be rooting him on. All right, let's get to our mailbag segment. You guys submit questions to us each and every week at Star Podcast on Facebook and on X. Also by email, davidstarpodcast at gmail.com is where you can find us there. And our first question in the inbox this week comes from Chase. Chase wants to know, guys, who does or has done your favorite victory celebration? Ooh, I don't think we've talked celebrations much on this show. This is a fascinating question, Don. Where do you want to go with this? What comes to mind?
I'm going my hero on this, and I know he's not the first to do it, but Alan Kulwicki was the first to do the Polish victory lap, not burn down the car and tear the shit out of the equipment up. But after he'd passed away, and Jeff Bodine had won at the All-Star race in '94, and he circled back around, the tears were in his eyes, and he's saluting the crowd. And you saw Kurt Busch do that over the years. Chase
Yep.
Elliott did that at Texas last year when he won in the Hooters car. Blaney's known for not tearing up equipment. Those are the cool celebrations, in my opinion, because you know these men and women work really hard on these vehicles. And yeah, you can have a nice burnout. Who doesn't love a good burnout? But there's just something old school about that. Mark Martin was the same way. Those are my favorite types of celebrations. You?
I like something with some theatrics. My favorite all time was the Carl Edwards backflip. And what was cool about Carl, I'll give him credit for this. And by the way, Carl did a great job with Prime the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I thought he was kind of the breakout star because that was his first time ever doing broadcasting. Um, if Carl felt like he did not win a race clean, he didn't do a backflip. He would man up and say, hey, that wasn't right how I won this race, and I'm not going to celebrate accordingly. I always appreciate that from Carl. Carl was always a clean race car driver. He wasn't perfect, but he tried to be. But Carl with the backflip, I know Daniel Hemrick has tried to make that a thing too, but one problem, Daniel, you got to win. Maybe I'll have those moments.
Hey,
He did when he won the Xfinity Championship, but we haven't really seen it much.
well,
Uh,
and I got to add too there with the Carl Edwards thing. Do you remember when he'd win those Busch Series races? I think he did it with the Cup races too. Not only would he do the backflip, but in victory lane, he would give a shout out to somebody like, and it was typically a child or a kid that might be in like a children's hospital, and said, "We're going to give the trophy to ABC XYZ, who's in whatever hospital." I always thought that was just so cool. Blaney gives the checkered flags. Edwards would give the trophy to somebody. I thought that was really special.
yeah, that's cool. I loved when Tony Stewart climbed the fence.
Oh yeah,
That run that he had, it was what, about 2005 to maybe about 2008, where he was climbing the fence after wins. And
Mm-hmm.
then he claims that he stopped climbing the fence because he got too fat, where he couldn't climb the fence anymore. But you talk about like you want iconic moments. I One of the biggest memories of my childhood, Dom, was 2005, the Brickyard 400. Tony Stewart wins for the first time at the Brickyard, his home track. He's always wanted to win in Indy and everything. And that was, I believe, it was one of the first times he climbed the fence. I think he climbed it earlier that year at the Pepsi 400.
Yes.
But to me, that was a cool moment for Tony Stewart. And I always loved it. It was,
Mhm.
I think what was different about the Brickyard one, like I think the Pepsi 400 one he just did himself. The whole team climbed the fence. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. What about when the driver goes in the grandstands? Not only climbs the fence, but like AJ Allmendinger at the Roval comes to mind on that. I think Blaney's done that before. Chastain's done that. The watermelon giving to some people. Like, does that play in the theatrical for you?
Yeah, I like that. I think Denny's certainly gotten into theatrics, um, not necessarily for doing something, but for saying things
Hmm.
after wins. Um, that's kind of like the only cool thing we have celebrations at the moment is Denny doing that. But yeah, that's what comes to mind on those. I do love a good celebration,
Hmm.
and you know, I beat your favorite driver. Sorry, Daddy. I beat your favorite driver. All of them. I love it. Is it cocky? Hell yeah, it is. But it's hilarious, and he's earned it when he does that. So that's a good one for me. Next question that comes in the mailbag. This comes from Don. Don wants to know, with Bristol hosting a baseball game between the Reds and Braves coming up soon, what are some other tracks that you think would be good to host another type of sporting event?
Tyler, you would probably know more on this one. I feel like I remember reading and hearing. I was just telling somebody earlier this week too that if I don't know if the situation got solved, but the Jaguar Stadium that they were looking at potentially playing games at the Daytona International Speedway in the infield for a year or two while their stadium gets fixed. Something like that would be pretty spectacular. Have you
Yeah,
heard anything else on that?
Daytona wanted it too. Daytona was opening up their arms and said, yes, we would love to have the Jags come out here. But things ultimately didn't work out. I believe they're going to play at Florida and they're going to play at Orlando and play in traditional football stadiums instead. So that's unfortunate. Um, and Daytona is actually like closer to Jacksonville than some of the other sites that they were considering. So
Sure, drive, yeah.
that would have been cool, but unfortunately didn't work out that way. I want to see Dom more football games. Like Bristol did a phenomenal job with the battle at Bristol a few years ago when Virginia Tech played Tennessee, and it was the biggest college football game of all time. 150,000 people there, packed out. I mean, it was an unbelievable environment, and I think that we can do more of that. The NFL's tougher because teams have their leases with their stadiums in their cities. But yeah, like I would love to see more college football or something like that. To me, I think that'd be great.
The crossover is cool and it promotes both sports. Like what they're doing with that baseball game. Is it Trace Atkins is going to be doing the concert? So you have a lot of great opportunity to have everybody win in a situation like that. And while the Jaguars thing's not going to work out, maybe some more baseball games. Man, I don't know the logistics of maybe doing some sort of basketball game or like a makeshift thing at Martinsville. That just immediately comes to mind. I don't know. But something where you'd have some more crossover with other professional sports, I think I'm sure NASCAR would, for the right price and the right deal, and the sanctioning bodies are willing to have some flexibility.
So at Kansas Speedway, the third biggest event of the year there, outside of the two NASCAR races they hold, is an event called American Royal, and it is the largest barbecue contest in the country, probably in the world. And you get all these people coming out. They have concerts going on, and you got all of the best barbecue from not just Kansas City but around the world competing to prove themselves. And it is a phenomenal event. And they use Kansas Speedway to do it. It's pretty cool. And of course, we know about Kansas City and barbecue and all that. It is it's an awesome thing.
That sounds like a great event. Why am I finding out about this now?
Oh well, uh, the internet, I guess, letting you down. Yeah,
Or they
blame
didn't
the
market the event that well because I'm just hearing about it now for the first time.
Okay. Yeah. I guess the internet let you down because it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, but like Texas Motor Speedway does like a country music festival every year that does big. Uh,
Vegas Electric Dance Musical Festival out there too at the Vegas track.
yeah. Yeah. There's all sorts of stuff. So, yeah.
Wasn't Watkins Glen trying to revive Woodstock? Wasn't that a thing too?
Yes, that was the thing. Um, it's interesting. Like you look at these tracks and people wonder, you have one or two races a year. Like, what else is going on, you would be surprised. Like I remember talking to some folks at Kansas Speedway a few years ago, and they said like we have something going on every weekend. Maybe it's not open to the public necessarily, but like these tracks have plenty to offer beyond just the races themselves.
Concerts are a big thing, man. Like you get car shows, auto shows. There's a good natural fit with a lot of that stuff, but concerts.
Moda's got an amphitheater and they host concerts there.
Mhm. Yeah, no, there's so much potential for these racetracks just beyond the racing and the product, and yeah, a lot that these places and facilities have to offer. I know Las Vegas, they have their driving school that they do Monday through Friday, and you can drive the exotic cars. They promote that on the strip. I don't know if, tell me if you've done that at some point, any of the listeners out there, because it seems like it's very well promoted throughout Vegas. And yeah, that place is a very busy part of North Las Vegas throughout the year, not just for the race weekends.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. Dom, before we go, what do you got going on this week, my friend?
Man, we want to talk about some Hall of Fame potentials. Maybe be able to go see Peter Frampton with some family this weekend. So that's going to be cool. I'll be speaking of concerts. That'll be a fun one. Haven't been to a concert in a little bit. So looking forward to that. Celebrating my dad's birthday as well this weekend. So that's why I'm not traveling to Atlanta. And looking forward to spending some family time with that. And should be a great busy time. This year is usually pretty busy, or this time of the year is pretty busy for us, Tyler, because we have birthdays and anniversaries and things that go on. It seems like every day in the 4th of July, there's something going on in this part of the world for us. So I wouldn't want it any other way. How about you?
Uh, you know what's crazy is I have nothing on the agenda just yet. I know that sounds boring for me, but
Summer Jones got canceled?
um, we are. Let's put it this way: we have an open canvas. The world is my oyster. I don't know what I'm doing this weekend. I'll find out.
I will say it was pretty cool. And by the way, congratulations to your Seattle Supersonics for winning the NBA
How
Finals.
dare you? How dare you?
Yeah, well, two-time champions. Tyler, you were at the parade. It looked like a lot of fun.
It was a great time. I
So
enjoyed myself.
great to see you go out to Seattle and come back in time for the show.
Yeah, I did. Screw you. Yeah. On that note, we'll put the checkered flag out in this edition of Let's Go Racing. Subscribe to the show. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. Hit the like button. We certainly would appreciate it. Hit us up on social media at Star Podcast on Facebook and X. Also by email, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. For Dominic Aragon, I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks so long. This has been another edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.